Just have a, we'll see what, I will. Hello. This is. It was good.
You ready? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee meeting. I am Councilmember Dee Dee Adams of the North Ward, and committee members, Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember Monday are members of this committee, and they're all present. As you can know, most of you by now, we have two parts to our agenda. We have the consent and we have the general. And I am going to ask any of the council members, committee members, council members, do you have any items that you would like to have pulled?
C3, please.
C4.
Move approval on the balance.
It has been moved and moved and properly seconded by Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Monday, that we approve the balance of the consent agenda. And will the clerk please pull the first full document?
Voice vote on the.
Oh, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you.
Item C3, resolution approving city-funded staffing and other assistance for select special events, including community parades.
Mr. Rao.
Good afternoon, Chair Adams, members of the City Council. This item is coming before you to basically establish criteria for when the city would provide financial support to community events, including parades. Over the years, the city has provided support for a number of community events. Those are provided in Attachment A, where we've actually provided financial support, oftentimes underwriting the cost for police staffing or barricades or use of the mobile stage that Recreation Parks has. So the purpose of this item is to establish certain criteria that the city management would use to evaluate requests in the future. We do provide police staffing and barricades for many other community events, but in a lot of those cases, the event organizers are actually paying for those services. So we're wanting to kind of create a little more structure to, what would be events that the city would financially help underwrite. So those criteria would include that the community event must take place annually and demonstrate a long-term commitment to serving the community. 2, attendance or admission to the event is free for residents. 3, the event attracts broad-based attendance from throughout the community. 4, the location of the event typically is not self-contained in a designated facility such as a stadium or arena. A good example of that would be parades. And then 5, event organizers can demonstrate that at least half of the overall cost of the event is covered by sponsorships and other fundraising that they have raised. So the item before you is a resolution basically establishing those criteria. If approved, then what you'll see with the proposed budget for next year for 25-26 would be some money actually dedicated for providing financial support to these events. Right now, for the most part, departments are providing or covering some of those expenses out of their current operating budgets. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Monday.
So thank you for the explanation. The Exhibit A, Attachment A, is not the list of exclusively those events that we will support going forward. It's just an example, the examples of those that we have in the past. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Councilman. These are the events that the city is providing financial support for. So there's other events that we provide police staffing, the barricades, but the event organizers are paying for that. In
Correct.
this case, this is the list of events that we're basically underwriting part, if not all, of the cost.
So if there's an event that's currently paying for these things, but they meet this criteria that's lined out here, they could potentially have police support and other supports from the city without having to pay that in the future.
Potentially, yes, sir.
Okay. How will we determine what that budget figure is? Are we going to go out to the community to kind of ask for a intent to apply or anything like that?
So, I mean, we do have, historical information for what it's cost for us to staff, particularly with, police staffing. That's usually the largest expense for a lot of these community events, and you can see on the attachment the amount of staffing we have. So we'll go back and we'll look at that to kind of see what these events have cost us over the years and kind of help build a number based on that. And then, as far as allowing for additional funding, we'll just have to kind of work through that during our budget development process.
I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a minute. I love the Moravians. I'm married to a Moravian. I love the history. And I'm not saying that I'm not in favor, but I am saying that to support one church and not others is somewhat of a slippery slope, I think. So I don't know if we want to consider that going forward, and I understand the reason for and what it does for the city and what it brings to the city, but I think there are some people who might question the wisdom of blurring that line.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Scipio.
I like this idea, Mr. Rao, but who sponsors Rock Out the Quarry?
So that's for the most part, that is a city event.
I thought it
That's a
was.
city event.
But it was on this list.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. For the criteria number 3, how will we measure that?
Criteria number 3, broad-based attendance.
Yes.
I think that we'll have to probably work with the event organizers and kind of determine, what kind of marketing efforts that they are engaged in to try to bring interest to their event and at least start with that kind of conversation.
If it's the first time, let's say, for example, a parade, if it's their first time, we won't have any history of attendance to base this on other than what you just said. How have they marketed this? But that won't address criteria number 3, whether or not a broad base of community members will be coming out to participate. So I think that this one right here, we might need to try to adjust. You won't know.
Okay. Well, and part of the focus on this item is to, support those events that are established. And that's partly the reason why we have criteria 5 in there. If it's a startup event, we may not be looking to underwrite that particular event, but we want to show that those event organizers, those organizations are prepared to support their event themselves, and then at some point, if there's a determination that city support is appropriate, then we could look at something like that.
So for the events listed on Exhibit A, have we had sponsorships paid for by them, a certain percentage paid for by them in the past? And I know Rock Out the Quarry will not count, but for the others.
So I would have to go and research that, Councilmember Burke. I don't know to what extent the other events have, sought sponsorships from outside other entities. I think that would be research that we would know. I mean, we know that International Black Theater Festival has corporate sponsors, but I'm not. We know that the Winston-Salem Cycling Classic and Gears and Guitars, they also have corporate sponsors. I'm not so sure about a couple of the others.
And so this would be a new requirement for them, this criteria for the others. So this may have been asked, how will they be informed?
So I don't know that we actually envision, a kind of a formal, call for a request for funding type process. I think that when the special event permit process starts, or, actually we could probably reach out to those who have submitted special, permit applications in the past and inform them, if the council adopts, these criteria, that these will be the criteria that will be applied in evaluating their permit, so we could at least start with that.
I think that would be good, and that would give them a chance in advance to go ahead and try to get those sponsorships. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rao, as long as the timelines that we follow when people put in for permits to have parades and whatever through the city or to close off streets, I know we have timelines built in there of the submittal for the permit. As long as we can provide something like that, I think it's great. I also think, again, this is us moving to the next, because we get requests all the time, community groups and others wanting us to sponsor police. And again, I think they really don't understand how much a police costs when you start wanting to travel distances, or you anticipate a mixed crowd in a certain space and you want us to provide the police. I think, again, with the way policing is being done across the country, again, this is the next that all cities are looking at. How do we ensure the productivity, safety of our residents, but also not to stretch our public safety thin, whereas immediate needs of safety are throughout the city in certain communities, and we have to be able to respond when that call comes in. And I know we also need to look at, and I know that we do, when the timeline are set in the ordinance or the rules, and people notify us that, well, we want to have a parade or a running of the bulls, for example, and we need 40 policemen, that we are prepared to explain to them as to the why. That we also follow a criteria that we can only service so many events in this city. And for those of you that don't know, we get responses from citizens, businessmen, business people, when we close down their streets and roads to their businesses. They then can't have customers. When we do it through neighborhoods, and neighborhood people didn't know that we were closing down a main street for a parade, and they couldn't get in the house or out of their neighborhoods. So I applaud staff and the city manager and all of you for moving forward on this. To the council members' responses, as long as we make sure, again, the information, communication, and education to our citizens go forward as well. Are there any other discussions?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Scipio. Do we have to vote electronically on this one because we pulled it? Thank you, and the motion passes. Next item, please.
Item C4, consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 38 of the City Code relating to miscellaneous offenses and provisions.
Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Chair Adams, and I failed to recognize Mayor Joines. Apologize for that.
He
didn't even know.
C4 is an amendment to ordinance City Code Section 38-8 that allows for the sale and service of alcohol in certain city facilities. Right now, that ordinance specifically lists the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds, Winston Square Park, Corporating Plaza, Historic Bethabara Park, Piedmont Triad Research Park Courtyard here, just beyond here on Church Street, Reynolds Park Golf Course and the clubhouse, Winston Lake Golf Course and the clubhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium, and then the Salem Lake Marina. So the item before you today proposes to add Marshall Park to this list of city facilities where the sale and service of alcohol would be allowed. The event organizers, this would be only for special events. It's not for just use of those facilities outside of any kind of special event. So event organizers would be required to comply with health and ABC laws as part of this ordinance. But this would be this is an item that's come out of discussions with the Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership about perhaps expanding some programming there in Marshall Park. Jason Thiel, the president of the partnership, is here to answer any questions you may have. But that's the item before you with this piece.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councilmember Scipio.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. They pertain to the downtown parks, Corporation Plaza, Winston Square Park, and now it would be Mercier Park. But for Winston Square Park and Corporation Plaza, when alcohol is allowed, have we observed people drinking off-site outside of the park going into the city? And also, how is it enforced?
So I'm going to look to Mr. Thiel to help answer that question.
Councilmember Scipio, Jason Thiel, 515 North Cherry Street, Downtown Partnership. So what normally happens is we would get a permit from the Parks and Recreation Department. They would make sure that they require off-duty police officers. The off-duty police officers or security are going to be stationed at the entrances and exits, and that prevents the folks from walking away with the alcohol. The consequence of that is that the permit producer, you get an ABC permit, or you work with a brewery that has an ABC permit, it's a problem for them with ABC or ALE if they walk off beyond the premises that they have for this special event. So I guess it does happen on occasion, but it's not something that's common.
So it's not really much of an issue. We don't expect it to be more of an issue because of Mercier Park, where it's located, and it having two exit points, one on 4th Street and one on 3rd Street.
That's right, and I hope that Mercier Park, the Park and Recs Department is actually quite conservative with their issuance of permits for the park. It's just that there are some events that we've done during the daytime that if we do them in the evening, small concerts, they're going to be small scale. It would make a lot more sense for there to be a successful event with good attendance to have the ability to have some beer and wine for sale. There's also some notion that we would like to close off 3rd Street and the county leased park that's owned by you with the long-term lease, and use 3rd Street from Town Run to Liberty as a larger event venue, which would blend several locations together, but that location is actually very attractive because it wouldn't upset the traffic flow of downtown. So there's a couple of other things, but quite frankly, this is something that we don't really have a whole lot of plans for alcohol to be consumed in the park. In fact, it's a concern most days that we don't have alcohol in the park, but rather than go through all the hoops and changing the legislation, we'd like to have the flexibility to do it, even though we don't plan on doing it very often.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I was reading the ordinance itself, Piedmont Triad Research Park Courtyard, and it references events hosted by the city or by ID Alliance. Is ID Alliance still in operation?
I don't believe it is. Yeah.
They don't use the reference anymore. You could probably use the innovation quarter and replacement of that, but I would defer to them.
So I would suggest on the ordinance that it would be corrected. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mundy.
For clarification, it sounds like these are events that Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership would be sponsoring or that the city would be sponsoring. Could an individual rent the park and get an alcohol permit for a wedding or a wedding reception? It's not exclusive to the organizations I just mentioned.
Correct. I think that the interested party would be working through Recreation and Parks to get the rental agreement in place.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? May I have a motion, please?
Move for approval?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded by Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Scipio. All those voting yes, all those opposed vote no. And it passes. Thank you. We'll now move on to the general agenda. City Clerk, please call the item.
Item G1, resolution amending Article 1 of the Personnel Resolution, Employment Matters for the City of Winston-Salem.
Dr. Barnett.
Good afternoon, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry,
No, quite all right. You feeling okay?
it's the air.
Understood.
They're going to give it to some ice. You're going to do G1 about the personnel
I
resolution.
am. All right, let's see, where are we? All right, good afternoon. The item that you have before you is a resolution to amend Article 1 of the Personnel Resolution regarding employment matters here at the City of Winston-Salem. The first part of what this item does is it narrows our scope for what is considered a grievable offense by city employees. What that does is that allows us to more specifically address the concerns that people are bringing to our attention. We did some research in our department over just the past 2 years. So in 2022, our department got 62 grievances. In 2023, our department got 93 grievances. And so far in 2024, we've only received 31. What we attribute that to largely is our ability in collaboration with the city attorney's office to conduct administrative investigations. Administrative investigations allow us the opportunity when an employee comes to us and they say, I've experienced this thing. Right now, their only recourse is to file a grievance and to go through that entire process, which requires to be heard by the department, and then it goes on to the city manager's office to be heard at a hearing. And a lot of times what we see is happening at the end of that hearing process is the manager's office is having to come back to HR and say, hey, these things came out of this grievance hearing. We would like to know more about this before we can rule on this grievance. And then what ends up happening is that that employee has to wait, sometimes days or weeks, until we get to the end of that investigation. And a lot of times, this is involving an employee's pay. They may have been demoted, they may have been suspended, they may have been suspended pending a recommendation for termination. So what this allows us to do on the administrative investigative side is to complete that investigation on the front end, and then that keeps us from having to essentially clog up the grievance process for employees who have grievances that do need to be filed and heard for timely settlement. This will allow employees to have grievances heard when they have been suspended, demoted, or recommended for termination. The latter part of what this item does is it goes on to, it actually establishes that part of the process that we were talking about, that administrative investigative process. So it establishes the opportunity for HR in collaboration with the city attorney's office to lead and conduct those administrative investigations. It also puts into our code of conduct ramifications for people who are dishonest and for people who tell falsehoods, material falsehoods, during the course of one of these investigations. One thing that my department has found is that we have an issue with honesty sometimes in these matters. And if an employee cannot feel like they are going to be able to honestly participate in the investigative process, if an employee feels like, well, it's going to be my word versus that other person's word, and if that other person's word is proven to be false, nothing happens to them, right? We've heard that several times, right, where an employee, and a lot of times a supervisor, right, will say, this person came in there and they told out and out lies, and then HR says, yeah, we did the fact checking and we found that that was an out and out lie, but there was no provision for us to address that. This allows us as an organization to address those issues as they come up. And that is G1. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. I can attest to when I worked in my other job, I was in a situation where the person lied. And we ended up going to court for 3 years.
Wow.
And the person was found to be lying. They were an employee of mine. And there was nothing done. They came back to work and they were working with me, under me. And I had to plead with HR, and they had to get the employee to agree for them to be moved out from under me as their manager. And I agreed to it, and they agreed to it. But the point was, how can this happen that a person can lie? We can investigate for 3 years. They find out it's a lie, and that person comes right back like nothing is wrong, especially when it has to do with people's livelihoods, integrity, and all of that. So I commend you all for, again, going to the next. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Larson, Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember Monday.
I appreciated organizing the grievance process a little clearer for the employees. I do have one question, though, regarding outside employment, or it's called, I believe, secondary employment, where the if you have an employee feels that they've been discriminated against in a decision that's being made now by the department head and doesn't go up any higher than that, whether that's an equitable grievance appeal process. You explained a little bit why we pulled those out and made them separate. The department head decision to be final rather than going through the normal process of grievance.
I'm not sure I caught all of the question. I'm sorry, couldn't hear.
Well, in the section 24, section 23, it says secondary employment and outside employment. It gives parameters in which that can be approved. If it is not approved, the final decision on the ability for an employee of the city to undertake outside employment or secondary employment seems to reside exclusively with their department head. And I'm suggesting that perhaps might be a source of discrimination. It could arise in that occasion where somebody would be authorized to have outside employment and somebody else wouldn't.
So, of course, I
Why
think...
did we pull those two out? Why did we pull those two out of the grievance process?
So in that one, I'm going to defer to the city attorney's office.
I'll be happy to answer that. If in fact, well, first of all, in terms of secondary employment and outside employment, that has to be approved by the department head. And that decision is final. However, if that employee believes that he or she has been the subject of discrimination, that somehow they were discriminated against in that process, they still have a process to file a grievance under or file a complaint and have that complaint of discrimination investigated. If that's what they're saying. But if they're going simply through the standard process, that department head's decision is final. But again, if it kicks into harassment, discrimination, bullying, that type of category, then there is a separate process by which that will be investigated.
So it's not final. Why do you feel like it's discriminated against?
That is correct. If they feel like they're discriminated, if you look at page 2 of 16, you'll see complaints of discrimination, harassment, and bullying, and how those are to be handled. But if they just don't like the department head's denial of that request, and there's no evidence of discrimination, harassment, and so forth, then yeah, the department head's decision.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Scipio and then Councilmember Monday.
Mine wasn't about the ordinance or the changes. I thought they were very well done. But the question that came up into my mind is, do you or does your department staff ever have focus groups with random employees to review these kinds of changes so that you're getting their input to make sure it's covered all of the concerns of the employees, or is this something that the staff just does without the input of the other employees?
That's an excellent question. So when we are doing this, what we do is we look to our peers. We look to see how do we compare with the market. I cannot say that we kind of regularly go out and poll employees to say, hey, we're looking at this change. How would this fare? How do you think this would go over? We do regularly get feedback from our employees, and depending on the feedback that we get from our employees, that is what guides the type of policy research that we're doing. So if I've got, 15 employees who say, hey, at the end of this process, I was still not satisfied, that's what then signifies to us that we might need to look at this. And so that's what's led to a lot of the changes that you see right now before you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Monday.
I didn't realize there was a provision that our employees had to ask for permission for outside employment. I could understand that in the case of a conflict of interest, but if someone works in an administrative position and they want to work at Home Depot during the Christmas time to get extra hours at night, they have to get permission to do that.
So I don't know that I've ever really seen it denied. This is really just an opportunity for us as an organization to know when our employees are working in secondary positions to make sure, like you were saying, that there is no conflict of interest. But I can honestly say, I think in the 4 years I've been here, I am personally not aware of a single one that has been denied.
And is that standard practice for municipal governments?
yeah.
Okay.
You got workers' comp issues, there's lots of
Okay.
of
City
concerns.
manager, you're recognized.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, it's a standard practice, and for workers' comp and other issues, you need to understand if somebody is employed outside of their regular duties with you as the city.
Okay, that makes sense, and thanks for the explanation. The other thing has nothing to do with the ordinance, but it's something I brought up before because I believe words matter. We're not aldermen anymore, we're city council. I hate using the word personnel in reference to human resources.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do know from my experience that, again, when I worked with Johnson Controls and I became a somewhat city employee in '09, I had to notify my company because now we're talking about benefits, insurance, and then, you know, the healthcare industry decided that this was going to be the order of how we pay insurance. If you have another job, your primary job is responsible first up, and the secondary job finishes what's left, maybe. There's also this thing that if you are, like you said, workman's comp, have an accident on your second job, when your primary job, you can't go to the primary job. So it's best, employees all know, I think I saw it when I signed on every job I've ever had, that I had to notify them when I decided that I was going to take on other employment and the company. And that's in my hours and that sort of thing. Because if my secondary job conflicted with me being at my primary job, then Houston, we got a problem. Because the employees always know basically up front, you've been in HR, that you either got to make a decision, you're going to work your primary job, and that is your focus, or you're going to work that secondary job. It's your choice, but the company needs to know that, so if anything happens, they need to know. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Larson.
Just one question, sort of a follow-up on Councilmember Scipio's comment, is how is this information disseminated to the employees? I mean, has it already been disseminated? Are they aware of these changes that are coming on?
This is being discussed now, and once the changes are voted on, every policy or resolution that we do, particularly if it's got anything to do with our employees or staff, it's HR's responsibility, the city manager, to have those focus meetings where they get that information via email or whatever so that they understand what the changes are. The changes are only going into effect when we vote on it today, but they will pick the timeline. Could be November 1st, December, but all employees will be notified of this change because it affects them. Am I right, City Attorney?
I was going to say, when council votes on them at the full council meeting, and then also, if you'll notice on the last page, any grievances, in particular, if you're talking about grievances that are already in the works, they will be handled under the current process. So any grievances filed after this becomes effective will be handled under the new process. But yes, there would be communication information sent to employees to make sure they're advised. And then at some point in the handbook will also be updated.
Well, there's been a lot of comment on police and fire grievance process. And I'm sure that that has an impact on how other people are viewing grievances being handled. I guess we're not a union organization here. We don't have representation from the whole staff or employees that act as a group to review something and comment on it, either formally or informally. I'm just curious and want to make sure that they are informed that we're doing something that's going to affect their lives. They ought to be aware of it before it happens.
And they will. But again, you have to look at, as Dr. Barnett said, and staff, any of us that work and you have employees and you're dealing with your processes and operation, when things start to get reported, somebody is looking at all of that. And those reportings is what drove us, again, to make these changes. So that employees, if you look at the matrix at the very end of this presentation, it shows you what other cities are doing. And we are really in the process, no different, Mr. King, when we started, and Mr. Murphy, to work on our ordinances of zoning and planning and that big book that they gave us in '09 to go home and read, that we needed to start streamlining. And it took us a while. When did we really start to make that change, that transition to get to a more streamlined, easier process for citizens, developers, employees to read our zoning and policies?
We started a lot of that work probably back 2013, 14 with the Development Review Advisory Committee, and then we did the full UDO clear code probably 17, 18, 19 started the process.
So where we're going, again, you're going to hear me talk about the next all the time. We're going to the next, people. Strap on. We're going to the next. Anything that we can do to ensure our employees are well and safe and understand their benefits, their job, their training, their safety, that's the next where we got to get to. You know, there have been some challenges for us, you know, but hopefully what we're doing is we're trying to do better for our employees so that they won't leave us, whether it's their compensation, their benefits, and showing that we care and we're listening to them now. City manager has done focus meetings, his tour when he came on last year this time, and those won't stop. As Dr. Barnett knows, if you're not talking to employees, you got to be first listening to them. And again, this is what drove this personnel, or as Councilmember Monday says, HR change in some of our policies, so far as them being able to know that they have the right to file a grievance. They have a right to a speedy answer or process that allows them to understand what is happening and what can be their, abilities to circumvent or do whatever they need to do to get the right answers to their problem or the investigation. And that's where our legal department comes into play as well as HR, as well as the city manager and department heads. I think we're on a good path. You can trust me on that.
I don't think that's something we just want to make sure that the employees are properly informed and the advantage participating in their future here in the city.
And they will, but again, as he said, it's not like we are going, when we put these new ordinances and processes in place, it's not like in stone, a plan. We're going to talk about a couple of those today. It's a guideline, and it gives us an opportunity to tweak it when we hear responses from our customers, our employees, our citizens, whether it's the tiny house, whether it's the setbacks, whether it's any of that. It allows us to go back with downtown associations and businesses. We have to hear them. We may not can make it better overnight. We may not can do a Burger King where everybody get what they want, but we will always figure out a way to try to find some synergy and collaboration with everybody involved to let them know that we hear them and we want to be responsive to them. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Burton.
I think that I'm in agreement with Councilmember Larson. We've got to find a way to let the employees know about these changes and also to get input from them because they are the ones impacted by these changes, and to hear their voices and make sure that if there is any kind of conflict, that both parties are really fairly heard. As a former administrator, I had people all the time come into my office who had conflicts, And when they came in, this might not be the city's way, but this was my way. If someone came into my office to report an issue with one of their peers, one of their colleagues, I would say, just a minute, let me go ahead and bring them in. And most of the time, that settled that. You said a lot of times employees are not truthful. That would really give the opportunity to hear both sides at the same time, and maybe even, and I didn't read this anywhere, offer some kind of mediation. Because if the employees are going to come back together, you don't want the same problems to occur. And everybody needs to feel like they've been treated fairly. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Not, may I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have, it's moved and probably seconded. Councilmember Money, Councilmember Scipio. You are in favor, vote yes. If you oppose, vote no. Thank you, Dr. Barnett, you and your staff. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item G2, ordinance amending City Code, Chapter 2, Article 3, Minority and Women Business Enterprise Advisory Committee.
Welcome, Ms. Westbrook.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee and council. My name is Jakira Westbrook, Business Inclusion Manager. The item before you is to amend the City Ordinance Chapter 2, Division 13, entitled MWBE Citizens Advisory Committee. I will refer to that committee as CAC. The CAC consists of 11 members appointed by City Council upon recommendation of the mayor. Their primary responsibility is to review good faith efforts when contractors fail to meet the established goals for the city's construction and repair projects, estimated to cost $100,000 or more. So in order for the committee to conduct business, they must have 6 out of the 11 members present to establish a quorum. Currently, the committee has 8 vacancies with 3 sitting members. So staff is requesting that the number of seats be reduced from 11 to 7. The inability of the committee to establish a quorum or review and score good faith efforts can potentially affect the projects being delayed and those projects meeting the deadlines. So in addition to that amendment, we are requesting that the city manager is given authority to authorize the internal city committee to establish good faith to review good faith efforts and to conduct the responsibilities of the CAC when they're unable to establish a quorum. This will remain in effect until repealed by the governing board.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Clark.
Historically, how often did the CAC meet?
They have monthly meetings scheduled, but it just really depends upon if the contractors are meeting the established MWBE goals for the construction and repair projects.
What is your perception of why the attendance is so low?
I really don't have a gauge on that. We have transitioned since COVID to virtual meetings, so they do have the ability and accessibility to, have virtual meetings and to get on where they can, but I don't have a specific answer.
I think what we have is, it's a challenge, and it's been a challenge for years. If you all remember, we redid our attendance policy for advisory committees and that sort of thing. We had great hopes, all of us, when all of these commissions and committees that the city has. But we also realize the world has changed. It's hard for even some of the nonprofits that's been in business for decades to be able to recruit board members and advisory committee people now, because people just don't want to give that time like they used to. There's so much more in the world to do now, and a lot of people don't want to spend it in board meetings anymore, even if it's for the greater good of the community. Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember Monday.
I think we have a situation with our volunteer commissions and boards. We've seen the lack of enthusiasm and participation by volunteers who come on board. But I've also observed that so much of what we expect them to do this is not necessarily a negative, but it's a concern. The staff does. So if the staff's doing all of the leadership, there's really no buy-in that volunteers need to be doing. And I know the staff needs to move things forward, but I think we might need to look at how our staff does the liaison work with our volunteer boards. Because if I'm on your board and I don't have to do anything but show up, but there's no welcoming of my ideas and my voice, then what's the use of me showing up? I do know that years ago, one of the things we celebrated in Leadership Winston-Salem was that the city of Winston-Salem, as well as the county, had these volunteer boards and commissions. And it was a real concerted effort to get people to participate on those boards because their voices were being heard and they were impacting policy and operations. So I think we might need to, or Mr. City Manager, might need to really look at how we really internally are working with our boards and commissions as the staff to move things forward, because I really think that might be a little gap. And we also need to have a much more formal process of recruiting people for our boards and commissions. Where do we go when we know there's an opening on a board or commission, and what are the criteria? I really don't think we're doing a good job of letting the public know that they can serve and what's that criteria. I don't see it anywhere in my little sphere of information, and I think we need to do a better job of inviting people to help us run this city and give their opinions through these boards and commissions, because that's what they're for.
Councilman Bundy?
I agree with you. I think oftentimes we are asked to bring people onto committees, which is great because we know people who might want to serve, but it also becomes very nepotistic, a lot of nepotism if we're bringing on people that we know, and I think we do need to have a broader reach. The other thing we need to do is give these committees an opportunity to present their ideas. We get that from only a handful of committees. So we're asking people to dedicate their time, to come to meetings, to use their brain power, use their connections to come up with ideas, and we don't do anything with those ideas. That's very disheartening, and I wouldn't sit on a committee for more than a year if you didn't use my ideas or at least give me an opportunity to present. So I think our whole system needs to be overhauled and used better. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I don't know where the responsibility lies to improve that, but there could definitely be some improvements to make those committee members feel like they're being heard and that we're using them. They've got good ideas, they've got knowledge of the community, and we don't give them an opportunity to tell us about that.
Sure.
Councilman McIntosh?
I think we're also seeing somewhat of a response to post-COVID. I think when COVID hit, everybody sat at home with nothing to do. They signed up for boards and committees. Every Zoom meeting was full.
Everyone.
People had nothing to do, so let's get on a committee. Let's contribute. And it was great because we had all that enthusiasm. And now there are lots of other things to do. Nobody wants to sit in front of a screen. So I think that's a sort of a natural continuation of that. But it really is a struggle to get people to volunteer for just about anything now.
And it's not just Winston. When I go to these meetings across the state, in the country, other municipalities struggle with it too. You know, they come up with great ideas as to how to get people more engaged. And it's just the way our country is. We get engaged when it comes to our door. And that's great. But, you know, going back to what we said, true, we have probably 3 to 4 or 5 advisory committees or commissions that actually work and they enjoy their work. And, you know, I think we have to look at it, Pat and staff, how do we kickstart this one as well? Something to think about. How do we get more people engaged to be on these advisory boards and commissions? Because we got what, 40 plus? Mayor said you have 40 plus. But I would like to hear if anyone is in agreement of the item G2. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Monday, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember Clark, discussion.
I hear this from numerous committees, commissions, whatever they are. We got too many and they don't have anything to do. Why would I go to the trouble of leaving the job, home, whatever, go to a meeting and there's one item on the agenda, two items on the agenda? The city manager gonna look at it. I would suggest you look at it and see which one you can combine and put together. I suggested, for example, when we had the public art, we put it with the Public Appearance Commission. And nope, we'll make another commission. So look at the agendas, and I think you will see people are not going to waste their time going to meetings if there's nothing on the agenda or very, very little. Fewer commissions, more meat on the bone, I think.
Let's form a commission to study it.
Yeah, let's have a commission study.
Councilman Monday.
I think this is exactly the right thing to do so you can move forward and do business. And I wonder if maybe there are other committees that the number of members is just too high and they can't do business. So I think each committee might want to look at your total membership and see if it makes sense to shave it down in number so you can get a quorum and do business and move forward.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded, and it has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item G3, consideration of a resolution adopting the Proposal Forward 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Public hearing date for November 18th, 2024.
Ms. Crum, you're up.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, Mayor Joines, members of committee and council. I have a presentation. Okay. So for 2045 comprehensive plan, we'll start at the beginning. So what is a comprehensive plan for anybody watching or doesn't know? It is an official public document that guides growth and development. It is a guide. It is not code by any means. It is a visionary document, so it's very sort of broad-based and high level, but it's community-driven. And it serves as a foundation for other documents like our area plans that we do in our department or other topic-based plans like bicycle and pedestrian planning, transportation plans, city and county policy, because this is a city and county plan, as well as capital expenditures. We are regulated by the state to have a reasonably maintained comprehensive plan because we do our own zoning. Our current comprehensive plan, Legacy 2030 update, was adopted in 2012. So we're usually follow about a 10 to 15 year cycle on updating comprehensive plans. So looking at sort of our process, this has been going on for a number of years. We started back in 2021 doing research, looking at our demographic trends, our development trends, socioeconomic trends that we have, as well as doing literature reviews of other national recently adopted comprehensive plans to see what else people are doing, what they're including, what elements are including, and things that we liked or didn't like. From there, we moved on to marketing the plan. This was specifically about attending community events, starting with the 2022 fair, having tables at those events, trying to get people to start thinking about community planning and start developing that contact list to sort of involve folks as we moved along the process. That continued on going to community events all through fall of last year. And then last year was really about outreach. In the spring and April specifically, we launched a website for 2045.com as well as an online survey, and we also did stakeholder meetings. We met with the boards and commissions to get their input and use them as a networking tool to sort of get the word out. We started holding public input meetings in the fall of 2023. And then we held some more this spring. And then basically the spring and summer has been spent drafting the plan, using all the input that we have gathered over the last year, 2 years, in drafting the goals and strategies. And then in July and August, we actually took those goals and strategies out to the public to get their input on those as well. And lastly, we're looking for adoption both by the City Council and the County Commissioners. So speaking specifically about outreach and participation, like I mentioned, we had a website for 2045.com. It's had over 10,000 site visits. We had an online survey that had over 2,900 participants with over 4,000 written comments. And then we went to 16 community events, 9 stakeholder meetings. We also sought out teens. So we went to the Youth Advisory Council. We also did team presentations through Recreation Center. We had a children's booklet. And then we did a really strong marketing campaign, both using TV, radio, social media, and billboard that had over 1 million impressions. And then we had 20 public input meetings, and that's had roughly over 250 attendees. And I will say all of the input that we've received is on for 2045 website. So if anybody wants to go through and read 4,000 comments, they are more, plus comments, they are more welcome to do that, but they're all out there for the public to view. This map here, once it focuses, shows basically where the community events we attended were at, as well as where the public input meetings and where those teen outreach events were. Again, this is city county, so we tried to be broad where we met. One thing I want to touch on really briefly is this idea of competing interests for land. We know housing is an issue. We know economic development is an issue. We also know that we're number 4 out of 100 North Carolina counties in population, but we're number 16 in size. So we have one of the higher populations, but we're on the smaller size in terms of land area. And we're roughly about 75% built out based off current zoning. So we know those two competing interests, housing and economic development, are competing for that same land. What we heard in the survey was also the idea of land preservation. That's also competing for that 25%. And so we asked folks during our public outreach meetings to rank them in order of importance. And the way they ranked out was land preservation was number 1, followed by housing and economic development. It wasn't a landslide by any stretch of the imagination. They were all very close. But what that told us was that we need to be creative in our thinking of how do we meet our housing goals, how do we allow for economic development, and also allow for the opportunity for land preservation thrown in there. And so that informed our goals and strategies that you see in the plan. The plan is really centered around 5 vision themes. It is unlike Legacy 2030 Update, which was a very big plan, about 250, 300 pages. It had 14 chapters, I believe, on every sort of topic. Our goal was to keep this short, so it's less than 100 pages, and to really focus it. And so it is focused on these 5 vision themes, being attainable housing and stable neighborhoods, strong economic opportunities, connected and accessible spaces, vibrant character and identity, and then a sustainable and healthy environment. And collectively, those 5 themes implement having managed growth in land use. This is really acts as our growth management plan. All of the goals and strategies listed in the plan meet one of the 3 guiding principles of equity, livability, or resiliency. Again, looking back at that survey data, we knew that these were important concepts, but when you think about how do you improve equity, how do you improve livability and resiliency, it is through housing, job creation, community appearance, and identity, access to services and amenities, those sorts of things. So the 5 vision themes really implement these 5 guiding principles. And every single goal and strategy is supported by supports one of these. So I'm going to go real briefly through just the goals in each of the 5 vision themes. I will say the goals are not in any particular order. Goal 1 is just as important as goal 5 or vice versa. It's just how we happen to write them down. So goal 1 in looking at housing and stable neighborhoods is really about having abundant housing and to allow for choice and to allow for housing affordability. And in this sense, when we talk about housing affordability, is households not spending more than 30% or 28 to 30% of their household income on mortgage or home cost. So that's going to be broad based off all the households. Goal 2 really looks at affordable housing, which is sort of your subsidized housing or your workforce housing. Goal 3, acknowledging and address sort of past injustices and policies that have led to inequities in the past. There's been quite a few that happened decades ago and that we're still living through right now. Goal 4 is creating well-designed neighborhoods that actually have access to services. So that's dual front between just the neighborhoods themselves, as well as land use next to the neighborhoods. And Goal 5 is minimizing housing insecurity and homelessness. Homelessness is a very broad topic. It is a topic that came up quite a bit in our survey. Planning and development has a really tiny sliver in it, but our tiny sliver is sort of addressed in Goal 5. Looking at strong economic opportunities, Goal 1 is pretty straightforward, just recruiting and retaining companies that provide quality jobs. Goal 2 is about job sites and supply of job sites, industrial park sites. Goal 3 is about providing economic opportunities in East and Northeast Winston-Salem, Forsyth County that has traditionally been underserved. This is the area where the Beltway is now, so that changes that dynamic, and there's to sort of take advantage of that and provide jobs in that area. Goal 4 is about increasing upward economic mobility, which is basically the ability to move up the economic ladder through job training and educational programs. Goal 5 is about downtown Winston-Salem and sort of continue to revitalize and build up downtown Winston-Salem. Goal 6 is about entrepreneurship and really building our entrepreneurship. And then Goal 7 talks about fostering a sustainable and vibrant local agricultural economy. When you look at farmland, it is not enough just to have the farmland. You have to have the economy around agriculture, meaning processing facilities, cold storage facilities, farmers markets, farm-to-table institutions, things of that nature. So that speaks to that goal. For connected and accessible spaces, this is basically access and mobility transportation. Goal 1 talks about alternative transportation means, bikeway, sidewalks, greenways, bike lanes. Goal 2 talks about making our transit system more efficient. We started working on this. It'll continuation of that. Goal 3 really talks about the idea of safety and really make sure that we have safe traveling from point A to point B. It doesn't matter how wonderful our infrastructure is, if people do not feel safe using it or if there's a perception that it is unsafe, they will not use it. So improving safety. Goal 4 really speaks about having access, regardless of age or ability or income, have access to needed services as well as amenities. And that's a broad base of amenities there. Goal 5, looking at the sort of land use and transportation decisions and making sure that they are mutually supportive. What we hear a lot in our zoning cases is traffic, and this will, traffic on the road, that the road's not built for this level of development. So really addressing that. And then Goal 6 is about connectivity, making sure our neighborhoods are connected, that we have good connectivity, multiple points of access, as well as making sure our sidewalks are connected and our greenways are connected. For vibrant character and identity, first one's pretty straightforward, making our public works beautiful, just our public facilities beautiful. Goal 2 is about maintaining clean and attractive neighborhoods and public spaces. We heard a lot about tree canopy and green space. That's in Goal 3. We speak about that. Goal 4 and 5 talks about historic preservation, but the two aspects of it. Goal 4 is about preserving structures in neighborhoods. Goal 5 is about telling our story and really sharing our history. Goal 6 is about preserving rural character, and Goal 7 is related to public art. And then sustainable and healthy environment. Goal 1 talks about climate change and addressing climate change. Goal 2 is about having equal access to clean air, water, and green spaces. Goal 3 is about mitigating sources of pollution in land use. 4 is connecting, again, the parks, the greenways, the open spaces to have a connected network. Goal 5 is about preserving our local ecology and natural landscapes. And 6 is about developing and supporting a local food economy. Again, having local food, having healthy food for people across the community. Talking about managed growth and land use. Goal 1, again, preserving our rural spaces. And Goal 2 is about developing where infrastructure already exists. This is both from a land preservation standpoint, but also from a fiscal standpoint. It is expensive to build and maintain public infrastructure. And then Goal 3 sort of takes that a step further and really strategically expanding our developable area that best accommodates growth and the needs, as well as preserving rural areas, and then strengthening municipal finances. And then the last goal is about compatible land uses, transition between land uses. Again, that's something we hear a lot about, and you all hear every time there's a zoning case. I don't want that next to us, and how do you make that transition between something like a heavy commercial to a residential area? This is our new growth management plan. It's very similar to the previous plan, uses the same nomenclature. So the dark red is the city center, town centers, think downtown. Urban neighborhoods is orange, that's neighborhoods built prior to 1950. The yellow is suburban neighborhoods, basically all recent development, suburban development since 1950. The light green is areas of possible expansion. And then the rural areas are in dark green. So looking at here, the areas that have been changed are circled in the purple color. The area to the west of Louisville, and then to sort of west of Clemens, those 2 areas, small areas down there, those are projects that are in place for sewer already. So that's why they've been changed from GMA4 to GMA3. The large area to the east of Clemens, sort of south there, that was shown as GMA3 in the original legacy document. It was changed to GMA4 in Legacy 2030. We're changing it back to GMA3, going back to what originally was in Legacy. The area on the southeast side of town there, that is an area that is marked for a future expansion of infrastructure. We received state funding to cover that cost. So that will be happening in the next couple years. And the big area up north is really what probably the biggest change. We looked at this in detail. We spoke with the utilities department about this. That area there is new area served by the Beltway. So the dynamic up there is very different. We've already had requests for development up there because of the Beltway interchanges. And looking at that, the one thing you need to know is basically right where that Beltway is, rough about, that's the ridge line. So anything north of that will have to be a pump station. So it increases the cost. So we looked at actually 4 basins, the large one that's shown there, and then 3 of them that would be to the east of that. And we felt that this one provided the best opportunities. Germantown Road goes right through it. It's close to Rural Hall as well as the city, and allows for a good connection there. The other 3, you would have to go through the GMA4 property that's already GMA4 before you got to them, so it didn't make sense. Looking to the west, that Beltway sort of west of Ronaldo, south, that's not funded yet. Given current circumstances, I don't know when it will be funded. So we didn't think that this was timely enough at this point. There is an implementation chapter at the end of the document. I will say that it is not exhaustive. It gives us a starting point. And it is organized by theme and goal. There is not a timeline to attach this. Typically in some of our past plans, we have a short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. We took that out this time because things are changing rapidly. Funding changes, staffing levels change, priorities change, technology changes, best management practice changes, opportunities present themselves on a whim, and so we have to take advantage of those. And so we really wanted to build in flexibility. That's one thing we wanted with this plan, was to be flexible and nimble to adapt to change, because we know things happen very rapidly. The planning board adopted the plan during a September 12th meeting, and I believe we already had this on for November, so a request for public hearing be set for November, and I will answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions? Yeah, great work.
Thank you.
Amy and Chris and all of them. Yeah, it's that type of cut-up day between he and I. Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember McIntosh.
I think this is a beautiful document. Thank you for all the people who went into planning this. It is a very safe document. In my opinion, it doesn't have any dramatic steps that the city would be taking. It just maintains the status quo. We have about 40% of our residents living in poverty. I don't see this being addressed significantly in any way. How do you make housing affordable if people are not working and they don't have income? Just having jobs come to a neighborhood doesn't necessarily get people lifted up. I think I would love to see something a little more intentional that we do in terms of getting people lifted out of poverty over the next 21 years. I just think it's a very safe position that we've taken, and the status quo would be maintained, because what will be happening is people will be moving out of the city more into the suburban areas and to the surrounding areas as the city becomes more and more poor. So I'm just concerned that we must be a lot more intentional to lift people out of poverty that's here.
Councilman McIntosh.
I'm wondering if we have a jingle to go along with this, like we did at the last one.
No, we did not do a music video
I'm a little
this go
disappointed
around.
about it.
Yeah, you could have done a 2.0.
I don't think we could top that, so we didn't even try.
This is just more of a comment than a question, but the amount of outreach for this was amazing. I mean, I attended a bunch of these, and just the number of people that showed up, I mean, just very impressive. The effort to get out and reach people where they were was just really, really impressive. I'm not going to read all 4,000 of the comments, but I just really want to applaud you guys for getting out and talking to people and getting folks to actually respond. It was really very, very good.
Thank you.
So, thank you all for your efforts.
I'd like to say again, as you stated at the beginning, it's a guide. And it basically highlights, I'd say, top level of where we need to possibly move to. And the people, attendees and comments spoke to that. And the next phase of this, as most of you know, is when these other plans come out that are more focused, more intentional. As they say, they'll have some meat on the bones, some action items. How are we going to get there? What resources and all of that. This is just a high-level view of the plan going forward. I'm going to get the mayor, and then I'm going to get you, Councilman McIntosh.
Just wanted to say the issue about only 25% of our county is still available, and we are a small county.
Yep,
It's even
one of the
smaller
smallest.
when you get into the drainage basin there. So I'm very happy that it includes conversation regarding development in the northeast and southeast using the lift station, which is going to be, going to be able to continue with.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So we do have a lot of our land mass already used, but we need to continue to densify what we already have, because if we're going to make our transit system effective and efficient, then we need to intensify that density so that the transit system works better. We're going to see intensity of development and intensity of population growth that we haven't seen. North Carolina, the population is going to increase like we haven't seen it before. The Carolina core growth is going to spill over into Forsyth County. I mean, we're the third fastest growing state population-wise of any state in the country. Florida is getting, I mean, we're getting hammered by hurricanes. Florida's getting hammered probably worse than we are continually. We're going to see population growth, I think, at a faster rate than we've seen. So we better brace ourselves for population growth. I think we're going to see it. And so being flexible on a plan, I think, is more important than trying to nail down a master plan that we're going to have to come back and change. So I think the flexibility really is a good idea.
And for me, moving forward, and I don't know if this is how we do it, but we may need to think about it. Once we vote for this, I'm sure that you guys would do another round of, okay, we got the plan, now what? Because the citizens that turned out, and maybe the ones that didn't, again, they're looking for action. You know, what is it that you're gonna do to make this better? Like the one thing, well, there were 2 or 3 things that stood out to me. I always knew that housing was gonna float to the top. I don't care where you go in this country, housing is at the top of everybody's list. I like the fact of the economic development, but I also understand there are underlying issues that perpetuate the seriousness of it. Again, low salaries, poor jobs. We got workforce development, but again, when I tell people, our people don't know what that means. Where's the plan for me to get from point A to point B, or my job growth, or have to get to better employment, better training? We've got to be able to nail those things down so people don't feel hopeless as to how do I get to the next. When I see that food insecurity still pops up after 15 years now for me, when we still don't have grocery stores in over half of our city, we might have some small service stations, serve some sandwiches, got a little fruit there in front of the counter so they could qualify to be an EBT stop. We have got to be intentional, this city, that we can no longer think that economic, vitality is going to come to the east if we don't have grocery stores and amenities and resources, just like the attendees to the workshop showed up and said. We don't have grocery stores. And when we think about development now, and we've been talking about it for a while, some of us have got to get on the horse and go visit these people that keep saying that the numbers don't work. When I got to get on the bus, get an Uber, and go to Harris Teeter, Lowe's, Publix on the west side to get the best value for my money. That's economic development. People are thinking about their pocketbooks. So we as a city, when we start to nail down these plans, and Councilmember McIntosh, you may be leaving the seat, but you're not leaving the building, okay? Because we're gonna need people like Jeff to help drive these initiatives with the relationships that he has developed his whole life while he's lived in Winston-Salem. So again, congrats and thank you, Amy, Chris, all of you, and Aaron, your departments and staff, your team. I look forward to hopefully 4 more years of this, okay? Thank you so much. May I have a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded by Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Monday. All those in favor, please vote yes. All those opposed, vote no. Did it come up? Okay. Thank you. Motion passes. City Clerk, next agenda item and last one.
Item G4, consideration of items related to guidelines and implementation of the Affordable Housing Development Program. Resolution authorizing implementation and ordinance amending the project budget ordinance.
Thank you. Ms. McClain.
So here I am floating to the top.
That's right. That's right.
So good afternoon, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee and council, Chantel McClam, Neighborhood Services Director. So last month, I presented to you all an affordable housing development information item, which included an affordable housing development process, possible funding sources, and also an implementation plan. The item before you this evening is actually twofold. One, to approve staff implementation of the process, and 2, to reallocate $2 million from the construction loan program back to the ARPA revenue replacement to be used for affordable housing purposes. But before the committee votes, I did want to give clarity on a couple of things. One is going to be our scoring matrix or our evaluation process, but the other I wanted to also, there was a concern raised that this would possibly limit access to some organizations in the community, but the main goal of developing this process was to ensure that we had a clearly defined process and also a predictable process calendar so that access would be open to all, meaning we want big developers, small developers, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, whomever is interested in bringing affordable housing to Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. We want them to come to a developer training session, information session, learn about the process, look what a responsive proposal looks like so that you can make sure that you've got everything that's needed so that it can be evaluated properly. So come to one of those sessions so that we can enlighten you and teach you how to submit a proposal. The other thing, like I said, I wanted to give clarity to is our scoring mechanism. So in this, I pulled from my finance days. And so there's going to be calculations within calculations, but this is basically our scoring criteria. So we've got a development quality, maximum points of 35 in that category, leverage resources and financial feasibility, 30 points in that category, the experience of the development and management team, 25 points, MWBE participation, you can get 10 points in that area. And then if there's supportive services provided at your location, then that's an additional 10 points. So a maximum of 110 points. Okay, so this is where the calculations are embedded. Probably the hardest one that I want to make sure that I explain is going to be that development quality score. So that development quality score is a combination. There's a total of 100 points that can be pulled, that you can obtain from that. It's going to be a combination of your location score, which is a maximum of 50 points. That location score is going to be how close you are to amenities and necessities. How close are you to a grocery store? When I say are you, how close is your project going to be to grocery stores, hospitals, emergency services, places that people can work, transportation. So if you are within 2 miles and below, you're able to get the full 50 points from that location piece. The development quality score also has a score associated with the AMI units, meaning anything 80% and below, if you are able to get the full points associated with AMI. That's worth 30 points of this 100-point score. And then there's the amenities scoring, which is worth 20 points from that. So like I said, there's calculations within calculations. I did not want to bring that full big spreadsheet to confuse everybody. I just wanted to see if I could get the point across on how you can obtain these points. And so the system that we have here will bring an information chart that will show them what the location score is. It'll show them how many, the breakdown of the units. If it's a majority 30% AMI, of course you're going to get a higher score in the AMI. Amenities, we require all projects to select at least 5 amenities, 3 from the first priority category, which is in the process. And it's going to, our training sessions will last an hour, 2 hours. It's going to be long enough to ensure that everybody understands it. And so that amenity score, if you select the 3 from priority and 2 from the second priority, your score will be a normal basis score. If you select 5, all from the first priority amenity score, of course you're going to score higher. So these are ways that we will be talking to and informing developers on how they can increase their score when submitting proposals, on where they select their amenities, where they select their project to be, and also how open are they to having more 30% AMI, 50% AMI units included in their project plan. Moving on to the leverage resources and financial feasibility, we want to know what the developers are bringing to the table. These projects should not be fully funded by the City of Winston-Salem. They should also have some skin in the game when it comes to this. And so the percentage here, we want to see how much you're asking us for versus how much other financial backing you have in your capital stack. And so that percentage will come from those items, and we also look at credit as well. Development and management team, that's going to go 2 years of experience. How long have you been doing this? How many years have you been developing? We look at the size of the project. Is this a normal size project for you to develop? Have you had success previously in years prior to show us that you are able to have success in the project that you're presenting to us? And of course, minority and women-owned business enterprises, either they can certify that they are, in fact, a minority or women-owned business, or they can show us good faith that they're going to ensure that they have at least 10% working on the project. And supportive services, like I said, those are points that you can get in addition to, and that's if you provide supportive services at your facility. That can mean on-the-job training, financial, education, anything that we want to make sure that when the people come to this affordable housing, that they are able to stay there. We're trying to ensure that we're helping with our homelessness situation, that we're helping people to maintain affordable housing. And so, of course, it's going to be worth more if you bring supportive services to your apartment complex, townhomes, whatever it is you are proposing that you build on our property. So I know that that was a lot, and you may have some questions about development quality, so I can go ahead and move forward with any questions that you all may have.
Councilmember McIntosh, Monday, Scipio.
We'll take your committee first.
Oh, Monday,
thank you.
Scipio.
A
Yes.
lot of calculations,
Yes.
which is good. I really like this. And as I was looking at location, I realize it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. When we're talking about trying to build density, if you build it, they will come. There's not density there, so there's no grocery store. But if there's no grocery store, they can't build. So I can see that as kind of going in either direction. I don't know how to resolve it. It's just, it crossed my mind. And then we're not specifically targeting any geographic area of the city. When we say location, it's more location or proximity to resources.
Yes, that is correct, Councilmember. It's proximity to resources, and you can still get points that you're going to get a better, you're going to get closer to that 50-point score the closer you are to the amenities. So if you are within 2 miles, you are able to get the 50 points. If you're 3 miles, it's going to go down a little bit. So it'll be 45, 40. It's going to go down the further you are from those. We were thinking walking distance when we thought that 2-mile radius, that they're within at least walking distance to a grocery store, within walking distance to a bus stop, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. McClain, these criteria are similar to LIHTC and federal HUD requirements as well.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Scipio.
I was reading the manual.
Yes, ma'am.
And it has in there, under the small-scale development and city-owned lots, it says, city-owned building sites that support the creation of affordable single-family housing units, asterisk, no less than 3 city-owned sites can be requested. So a developer has to request a minimum of 3.
A minimum of 3.
But
yes.
Those 3 can be any size lots, because some of our city-owned lots might be half acres, another one might be 0.5 acre, and others might be 8 acres.
Yes.
So that's the kind of, so it's they can't just do one.
Not just one. We are looking for developers to develop affordable housing and not just individuals to build one house on a piece of city-owned land. So
But
yes.
you didn't put a maximum there. Why did you not put a maximum of lots that they can request if you're restricting them to a minimum?
We didn't want to put a maximum, but it's going to come out when you're evaluating each of these pieces so intently that if you come and you say, and we have requirements that they have to build within a 24-month time frame, you come and you ask us for 100 lots, we're expecting you to have housing on those 100 lots in 2 years. So you have to be really sure about what you're requesting in your proposal.
And I'm sure staff, again, through the training and information sessions like we do for CBDG funds and nonprofits, there'll be an opportunity for the developers, builders, potentials to weigh in and again learn what this process is.
Because the project has to be financially feasible. So if you ask for 100 lots, you got to have the finances to be able to maintain, to support that 100 lot ask. So that's why we wanted to give a minimum so that we are ensuring that we're getting actual developers that want to bring affordable housing, but not a maximum.
So suppose there's land they want to develop, it's not city-owned, and they just need infrastructure support. How do you go about that when it's not about city-owned lots and building a house?
It's still going to be about their proposal and plan. So if they're asking for us to provide money or funding for their infrastructure, then it's going to have to be an affordable housing project. So we're going to be looking at all those pieces still, but it would still go into the scattered lot funding process.
And using this matrix, is there a score that an acceptable proposal has to achieve? Or are you thinking of the top 10 get funded and the others don't? What is the whole process there? I'm just a little concerned.
That's okay. We're going to score all of the projects, and we're going to present them to the full council. They will see how they're ranked. You'll see the number that each one received, that each project received. You'll also get a cover sheet, kind of like the exhibit that I showed you that had all of the AMI units listed out, where they want to build, what location score. It'll be really clear on there what the project looks like for you, but then you'll also have a clear score, ranked scoring, and then it would be up to the council to say, hey, we like this project. It may have scored this. We like this project. This is what we want to support, and this is what we want to fund.
And so we're saying there's going to be a finite pool of funds each year?
Yes.
And those that score the best are the ones who are going to get the funding? And if someone has a project they want to do, they'll have to find funding outside of the city to get that done?
That is absolutely correct, because right now, just from the plan that I presented last month, we would have $4 million to go towards the LIHTC projects and $1 million to go towards the the scattered lot funding projects. So yes, there's only a small amount of money. If we get 20 projects, it's going to be you all determining which projects get that funding.
Councilmember McIntosh.
I wanted to go back to Councilmember Mundy's question about the grocery stores, because North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, so many projects got knocked out that were located within the inner city because they were not near an existing grocery store, and so they got pushed to the suburbs, and that's really not where we need housing because it adds to transportation costs. Now, the Peters Creek, the flats, somehow got an exception, and they were funded. So I don't know if those dynamics have changed, or the scoring matrices have changed, but it does seem like a chicken and egg, kind of a catch-22 deal, because if you're going to attract a grocery store, you got to have rooftops. So I question how that scoring matrix is going to work, because we want to incent units in order to draw in somebody to provide those grocery stores.
Well, we don't look at just the grocery store, so there's a point in that location score. That's why I said it's a big spreadsheet. In that location score, there's a bunch of what we call necessities and amenities. And so even if you're 10 miles from a grocery store, but you're really close to emergency services, parks, greenways, that you're going to score higher in those categories to create your full location score. Yes, we want it to bring economic development to the city. However, we still need to put a score on the location that you are saying that you're proposing to develop a plan on. The grocery store could not overpower the full location score.
And I'm assuming also that proximity to a bus line.
Yes,
carries
transportation.
significant weight. And also to an employer like Foster Cabinets. You know, I mean, they're going to be employing,
Yes.
I'm assuming a lot of people, folks, Purple Crow, you know, folks like that. I would assume that that is going to weigh at a fair
Yes,
amount.
whether it has water and sewer connection already, it's in that location score. There's a lot of different pieces in that location score.
Mayor Jones, and then Councilmember Monday, and then Councilmember Clark.
I'm sorry. Santiago, I think when you presented this to us initially there, you said you had had conversations with the development community. Now that you've got more flesh on the nose here, have you shared this with the development community as well? Additional reactions?
I always come to you all first. I did receive, you know, they had the first box that I showed you, so they had the description of what all goes into that, so they knew that piece of it. The feedback that I mostly got from them was on the amenities, and so we're making improvements on the amenities. They just thought it was too stringent. We're also going to have electric, car charging, infrastructure added to that Tier 1 priority. So those are the things that the development, the contractors brought back. Yes, they didn't have any, they liked that it was a clearer way to obtain points in each category.
That's what I've heard as well, particularly the 2 calls per year, and they know how to plan their program for the years. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Monday, then Councilmember Clark.
Some of the things we can't impact, like the location of a grocery store, but we were saying that transportation, access to bus is very important. You build enough homes or you build enough of roofs, and we can put a transportation stop where it needs to be. So as you're looking at this, maybe factor into how many affordable housing units do we need to justify putting a bus stop closer by? I mean, we wouldn't change that willy-nilly, but there are some reasons that would require it or would be in our best interest, and that is something that we can affect.
And I think what's going to be very helpful in that is that we are looking to pull from our key departments for our evaluation team. So as we're going through these proposals, we've got somebody, we're going to have somebody from transportation, we'll have somebody from planning. We'll have somebody from planning on there, somebody from budget, somebody from sustainability on there to tell us, hey, this will work. We can put, you know.
That's a great approach. I'm glad you're doing it, really bringing some expertise to the table.
Councilmember Clark, then Mr. King.
I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but this is being recorded. Y'all can figure it out when I finish. I think there's a difference between multifamily and single family, and I think the plans need to be tailored accordingly. And the money probably needs to be allocated that way. That'll be up to us. We may say, okay, we got $1 million, we can spend X on single family and Y on multifamily. That strikes me as something that only a large company could do, because it's going to take somebody with some fair amount of expertise. And quite frankly, if I'm just building 3 single-family houses, that might be more effort than it's worth for the profits you're going to make on 3. Anyway, whoever thinks that's simple is a lot smarter than me, because it looks complicated. Anyway, I'll move on. Certainly pass it by the home builders. You've already mentioned that. we need to say somewhere in here, if you want to buy the land at market value, you can, and do whatever you want to with it that's within the zoning. That all this, because we did have, I think it was True Homes bought 10 or 15 lots at market value.
But it was,
And then the market dictated what they would put there. Yes, ma'am?
it was still within the affordable housing program because the lots were in the affordable housing program.
Okay, well, I think there needs to be, respect for this, that if somebody wants to pay market price and buy some land and put up whatever houses they want to put up at their expense, no subsidy, whatever. I don't think that's going to be many cases, but I think what I saw True Homes build, they paid market, I think it was True Homes. They paid market value, and they did not have any restrictions that I know, or subsidies, and they still put up good quality in the right price range. Anyway, I guess I'm saying there's a lot of different people out there building houses and need to approach them accordingly. I had an issue, and it's not in this, that if somebody buys a single-family house, they are restricted on who they could sell it to if they wanted to move based on income level. The person's got to meet the affordability. Also tied to that, if I were to rent an apartment or buy a house and I got a raise at work or a new job and I'm suddenly in a new income bracket level, does that mean I have to sell the house, or does that mean I have to move out of the apartment? I think that needs to be clarified in here. And lastly, and I may have made this point, but I'll make it again, we have a lot of single-family or single-house lots, not ones that are 6 acres, that are scattered out. And I think those are going to be the most difficult to develop, because you're not talking about some of big companies coming in. They like all the houses together so they can move the crew that's in charge of pouring the foundations from here to here to here. They know what they're doing, but they have a scenario that works for them. And I think we need to be sensitive to what do we do when somebody comes in and wants 3 lots that are here, here, and here. That's a different animal. And quite frankly, there are a lot of neighborhoods where that is the case. The contrast Ms. Scipio's got down in Happy Hills, some places, 60, 70 houses could go in down there. Whereas Ms. Burke's got some that have got scattered. And other wards have whatever. Anyway, I just think we need to be sensitive to that. And because I personally think those are going to be almost impossible to develop. And we'll just have to see. With that, y'all take it as you want.
Mr. King, then Councilmember Larson.
Let me go back. First of all, Councilmember Clark, I think what we can do is we can take that list of questions and provide written responses to those and get those back to you. Those shouldn't be difficult to answer. I want to circle back to a little bit of the conversation that's kind of unfolded earlier around the grocery store piece. I think some valid points have been raised there. And as I've heard the discussion and talking with Angel a little bit as well, it might be worth us going back and shopping the grocery store piece and kind of reallocating some of the focus and the weight on transit. Because probably at the end of the day, that may be the more significant factor in there. We just inked a 7-year, $218 million transit contract. You just heard Amy stand up and talk about how we need to make sure land use and transportation decisions speak to each other. And all of those kind of dovetail around the issue of affordable housing. So I think that is something we can go back and kind of, because I think some valid points have been raised. I think we can go back and take another look at that, maybe reallocate some of that weight to transit in proximity to transit lines. I think that's a fair request.
We can.
Councilmember Larson.
Yeah.
Regarding some financial support, if I understand correctly, we have loans, we have forgivable loans, and we have grants. Those 2 categories of financial support.
Those are the categories we did have before, yes.
The $2 million that we're getting ready to take away from the building loans, commercial building, whatever, business loans, where is that money going?
The $2 million from the construction loan fund?
$2 million we're getting ready to reallocate in this proposal.
It's going to go back towards the ARPA revenue replacement in order for us to have the $10 million that we want to break up over the next 2 years. So we would have $4 million, we'll have $5 million total, $4 million toward LIHTC projects, $1 million toward the scattered lot and funding for this year, this fiscal year, and then the next fiscal year we would have the same. But in order to have that $10 million, we need the $2 million from the construction loan fund.
So I'm a little unclear as to how you decide who gets a forgivable loan, who gets a regular grant, who gets a regular loan. How are those decisions made?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of this money is going into grants.
It's all grant money?
Yes.
Essentially, on the LIHTC, yes. On the single family, perhaps there could be forgivable loans in that piece, but yes, largely grants.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Monday.
In theory, is anyone penalized by taking that money from the building construction? Does anyone get the short end of the stick?
No, there's nobody being penalized. That program actually has been around since 1997, so it's no one being penalized. No one had applied for any funding recently. I think we've got 30 loans that are outstanding right now that's in that program since 1997. So no, nobody's going to be penalized.
Good place to pull, so thank you.
Councilmember Burke.
Will the 3 minimum lot exclude small businesses from getting started?
It should not if they're able to develop on 3 lots.
And to your question about the $2 million, there have been a lot of potential builders, small businesses asking about that fund. So recently, the ones that I've been talking with, so that's something to consider.
I'm just surprised that we've had $2 million sitting out there. We've started with what, 51 million or something, given on the ARPA, 52 million. We took, how much of that was dedicated originally to housing? 20, we pulled out 20 and we...
All 20 was dedicated to housing.
We pulled out 2,000 to help small businesses, basically. And we haven't had 0 applications on that. And I can understand that when we consider how much I know the need has been out there. I can't help but wonder if it was a marketing issue or whether the conditions of the loan or the grants were so arduous that nobody wanted to apply for them. But whatever it was, it didn't work very well, did it?
No, it didn't. The program's, it's been there for a year now, a year November.
Yeah, there was I guess a moratorium, so to speak, informal, on the program. You may recall just this year, you all revamped the program. Yep. So it hasn't been used in a while, and it was somewhat archaic, so we made an effort to revitalize the program. We just hadn't had a chance to really advertise it, to have any folks apply for the program. And this sounds like it might be a better use of the money. So it's been around for a while, but it was just on the shelf for a while as well.
So is that money needed in the first year program?
Yes, that money is needed for affordable housing. I believe that we can get more units built if we put that money into this program.
Right away.
Any other questions or concerns? Councilmember Scipio.
I just need a point of clarification. The manual, our Affordable Housing Development Program manual, is it only for new construction and not for rehab at all?
No. It can involve rehab. It can involve rehab, conservation. All of that is stated at the beginning of the program.
Yep.
It's all in what they put in their proposal.
Yeah, it's in there.
And is it in the total pot that's being allocated? Is a percent for rehab versus new construction, or it's just first come, first serve?
It's
Project.
project.
It's a project.
Best project.
I know.
Yes, yes. So no, it's not anything that's set aside just for preservation.
Councilmember Clark.
You've got Davis-Bacon requirements in here. Is that because we got federal money? Because that is
Yes.
another headache.
Yes,
Paperwork on top of paperwork on Davis-Bacon.
yes,
But that, we have to do that.
yes,
Okay.
with the current funding.
I think staff, Ms. McClain, Mr. Hunter, Aaron, and all of you, thank you so much for the work that you have put in and listening to this group over the past 2 years, basically. I know, again, that, and as you said, we benchmark other cities. We're out of step. We're an anomaly because other cities are already doing this that are smaller than us or bigger than us in North Carolina. And this is about the next. And I think for us to get where we need to go to, we got to go through some growing changes and some challenges. But I think the discussions that we've had over the long term have been heard by staff. And I think we're acting on some of this. Again, it's a plan, it's a guide. It is not in stone that we can't tweak or change anything. Once we roll this out, we're going to continue to get the feedback from the developers, the community, of the small builders, nonprofits, everybody. And that's a good thing because they want this to be successful as well. I am looking for a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilmember Clark and Monday. All those in favor, please vote. All those opposed, vote no. And the motion passes. Many sleepless nights, people, many sleepless nights. But I thank the council, the committee, the staff, all of you, the departments that worked so hard to get this to the finish line. Again, Ms. McClain and Mr. Hunter, thank you guys so much. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you. Yeah, at this time, our meeting has adjourned. Is adjourned.